All right, Bob, I like to frame you, and then we'll get into the meat of the discussion. And I know that this answer is going to be spectacular because anybody that wants to can go look at your LinkedIn. But how did you accidentally fall into franchising? What is your franchise backstory?
Yeah, I think it's just that fell into franchising as a young professional without really even knowing what franchising was. I think my first adventure into franchising was with a restaurant company called Smashburger here in Denver, Colorado. And they had a pretty blended mix of locations. Half were corporate, half were franchising, or half were franchise. And learned to love the business and learned that while corporate growth and building your own units has its pros for sure, there's just a lot of value in growing with franchisees and learning from those franchise partners about how businesses properly work and different ways that each are running their own business and insights and learning and being able to like grow with them. And so I often find having a bunch of partners that are going on the journey with you just makes us all better versus sometimes in corporate world, you're kind of talking to yourself and thinking you know the way and having a few partners along the way to help as well to help grow the business is exciting. So long story short there, but joined franchising through in the restaurant world through Smashburger and have really been there ever since.
When you fall into franchising, do do you understand mentally that you're in franchising, or are you taking a job in corporate finance and later on you're like, oh, this is a little bit more complex than I thought it was?
Yeah, I think in that specific example, there was a private equity backed company that was, listen, each smash burger costs about $500,000 to build, and so when you've got 100 corporate units and you've got that capital, your first focus was on the corporate side. Then you learned a little bit about the franchising side, and you realized the differences, the pros and cons of both, and so literally just kind of walked into it without really understanding all the details, but have learned to love it for all the reasons we just talked about. But there is nuances to it, and it's a different. You have to use both sides of the brain, I like to say. A lot of it is heart and emotion and sentiment, and franchisees, the importance of understanding both the numbers, but also the why and the sentiment at which they got into the business is key. So yeah, how to learn through, and frankly, like when you join in finance as a professional, you often want to run out the world through analytics and data, and franchising has taught me you've got to have both sides of the brain working, the data as well as the EQ, the sentiment side, to really nuance and bring along people for the ride.
So I'll preface this statement by saying my wife is a CPA CFO, so I know whatever I say is going to be criticized if I say it wrong. So that's statement one. So I have some credibility for what I'm going to say.
Love it.
I actually think this is going to put you on a pedestal, but I think one, your job in franchising is extremely complex, but it's also, if I'm a franchisee, it's often not used. Your expertise is not used as much as it should be, because I think you are the holder of so much great information. So on the complexity side, we have franchisor, we have franchisees paying fees and royalties back to a structure. Some of that has to be parked to the side for brand fund. And so now you're trying to make sure that all these funds are in the right areas. And ultimately, like, as much as a franchisor wants to be a single company, they're not if they have corporate units. They have a corporate business, and then they're in the business of servicing franchisees. And so that seems super complex. And then over onto the franchisee side, like, understand that you can understand all these different pictures, such as what should be the benchmarks within a P&L. And if I zoom out across all franchising, I don't think the CFO or the VP of finance is leveraged enough in two places. One, for franchise development, because you can look at so many different data points as references to help one determine if that candidate is viable or not based on their financial portfolio. when a lot of people in franchise sales want to sell franchises, you're like, well, let's make sure that we actually qualify the right way.
Yep.
And then on the secondary side, like if I'm a franchisee in the system, I'm trying to get onto your calendar because it's a gaps in inches to help offset royalties or other fees that it takes to navigate a business, because you are in a game of pennies to find profitability. And primarily food is a lot tougher to find the profitability than obviously a Sola or Woodhouse. But anyway, I open up that statement to say, do you agree with the difficulty, the complexity, and then the holistic lack of leveraging you for franchisee support and franchise development?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think it really depends on I think how finance is positioned within the organization. I have been unbelievably fortunate in my career where finance hasn't been seen as the bean counters, the guys or gals in the back of the office with the lights off who are just closing the book and living on a schedule. Actually, most of the businesses I've been in on franchising have actually realized what you've realized. And they've said, oh, like, this isn't just a keeping score position. This is actually a role that needs to be able to see over the landscape of all the businesses, whether it's corporate or franchise, and distill insights to franchisees about what, to your point, where there's opportunity. Growing up in the restaurant space taught me about trying to find every last penny within a P&L and to drive profitability because margins are thin. And I've taken that and sort of have built my career off of, we're not going to be that back office support function. We're actually going to be partnering with operations and marketing to drive the right insights, all to make sure we are able to win. And so what you see me mostly focused on in previous organizations and here at Radiance with Sola and Woodhouse is I spend a lot of time thinking about, all right, how do we build business intelligence tools and dashboards and data that are easy for franchisees to see where the opportunities are? Not just give them spreadsheets with a bunch of numbers on it and say, figure it out, but gosh, here are the 9 or 10 KPIs that move your business. And every morning when you wake up, I want you to be able to sign on to a portal and it gives you red, yellow, green. Where you rank. So you know every day when you wake up, man, I have 2 choices. I can go high five myself on the green, or I can run towards the red and go figure it out. And so providing those insights and partnerships to franchisees is what the name of the game and what I've been positioned to do throughout my career. So there's definitely that aspect of finance that is important to me. And then back to your point on development is, gosh, when franchisees are putting millions of dollars to work, we owe them the most attention we can give them during that development process to say, hey, we think this is going to work and here's why. The rent's right, the unit level economics are right, the profile of the trade area is right. So you're bringing some of that sophistication to the table is important for not only protecting your investment, but also making sure you know where to go run every day. Oftentimes without data, Nick, I find our ops team, our finance team turns into therapists with hypotheticals. Oh, if we only did this, if we only did that. Well, no, let's take all the guessing out. Let's make this easy. There's 9 paths, pick your 2 paths for the day and let's go run. So I think that's the way that I like to work, and that's frankly how I've been positioned within organizations, and super thankful for it.
Okay, I have a long comment that obviously I want your feedback on it, but if I think through some of the stuff that you're saying, like if I'm a franchise buyer, in my opinion, the franchise buyer should also qualify the depth of the finance team at the franchisor because of what you just said, green, yellow, and red. Once I've operated, I think through an example, I'm going to give a bad example. I'll leave the brand name out, but there was a brand, I vividly remember this, during really 2008 was the first run, that they're closing stores left and right. And I said to the head of finance, who was a co-founder in the business, I said, shouldn't you have qualified these candidates better? Because you qualified them so thinly that now when the S hit the fan, they didn't have the financial means to weather the storm, let alone scale. And so I've theoretically, my viewpoint is every franchisee should be qualified to own three financially. That means enough to open up one. I don't think they should be awarded three. I think enough to open up one, enough for a rainy day, and enough to scale. Like that's the responsibility. And so oftentimes with me saying like franchise buyer qualify the finance team because they're so essential to they're more essential to your business than you even understand. And then secondly, for finance to be able to put that parameter on there so that we don't have a situation where we're closing businesses where we've messed with people's life savings down the line. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think I agree. I think that's one of the key reasons we have a decision day process here at Radiance with both Sola and Woodhouse, where we go through a long process to vet the candidate, run all the right requirements from a net worth perspective, a just background perspective, to make sure that there's the ability to maybe make a few missteps along the way, but still be able to recover and grow the business and drive ultimate wealth. So huge, and I think very important in the process to qualify candidates, not only for them, but for us as well. I think we owe it to the rest of the system to not dilute the pool of franchisees that require us to divert attention to the underperformers because they weren't necessarily ready for it. We need to make sure we uphold our ability to like run and scale the brand, because listen, a few bad decisions in a few markets really impacts the brand. So we have a responsibility to ourselves, to that new franchisee, but also to the existing franchisees to make things, we're thinking long-term about the business. And then, we bring these candidates in and we hear their story, and there is again, back to the two sides of the brain. There's the back of the baseball card. Do you have enough money to do this? But then what's your background like? Are you able to be in hospitality? Are you able to work with service providers who come from different walks of life? Are you able to drive a people culture, which is so important to our brands? And if you are just a left brain thinker and all care about the numbers, guess what? This business is all about people and culture. And if you're not driving that culture, you're not going to win. So let's save you from yourself before you make that mistake and think this is just a business that's going to run itself. It's not. We are very, very clear in that up front, that while the business is beautiful and both of these models are great, if you're not a champion for your culture, if you're not driving the DNA within those four walls, you're just not going to reach your maximum potential. So we do take a very holistic review of candidate qualification to make sure it all makes sense. But I agree with you. Like, the reason they have me talk at decision day is to tell the story of, I'm not just the bean counter, but I want to be a partner and I want to help you grow. And there's another insights-driven function within this organization that's going to help you on this journey. So when it does get tough, you can reach out to me and we can talk about where the opportunities are within your P&L and how you drive top line to drive the business forward. So agree with you on the vetting on both sides. And I do think it is I would say an unlock or a difference maker to a lot of franchisors who take a data-driven insights approach and play offense with franchisees versus just be like, figure it out, man. Good luck.
Well, I mean, what I'm hearing from you is the value of culture. And so this question's a little different, but obviously the fact side is how much money they actually have. Like there's you can uncover some in some net worth, but this is the cash you have and this is your net worth. So this is how you're going to get financed.
Yep.
How have you in your career in a financial leadership position valued the currency of grit and hustle? Because what you're just talking about, like the way that you manage the culture, they might be a little bit thinner than you want on the financial piece, but if they have that other thing, that could actually be more value. So in a leadership role of a CFO, how do you measure or value that grit and hustle, you personally, because it's going to be different for everybody? How do you measure that currency?
It's at the top of my list. I obviously think, you need to have the end to the table to play the game. And so, those upfront costs are important. But when when we ultimately get together as a leadership team and we do thumbs up, thumbs down, the thing I most talk about with the team is, do they have the X factor capability to really win the day in the first 3 to 6 months? Can they establish the right culture? Can they establish the right processes? Do they have a background that would lend itself to get to profitability and that break even number as quick as possible? Because learning in that, when you're opening a location and you're picking a site and you're trying to hire and you're trying to do marketing, gosh, that 6 months before you open to 3 months after is, if you ask franchisees, is probably one of the more stressful parts of their life. And they're learning a lot of new things. So what can you not learn on the job? How to be a good person, how to drive a culture, how to create an ecosystem that's going to continue to retain and attract folks. If you have that DNA, all the other things can be pretty well learned by our team. But as I tell these candidates when they walk in for decision day, we are, whether you like it or not, we don't have an ops resource that's going to run your front desk, that's going to sit in your location and run this business for you. It's like going home with a newborn. You're going to have to go figure out how to feed it. And so, man, you've got to bring that X factor from day one and set the tone. And so it is by far, when I stack, obviously when I stack rank the intangibles and the importance, having that hospitality, people, hustle, if anybody, frankly, in the decision day process, Nick, says to me, well, you're going to do these things and I'm going to do these things, it's like, no, it's your business. If they have a sense that I'm going to back out of this thing, it's just not going to work. It's your business. And hey, Nick, I say, I literally tell this in decisions day, man, if I figured out a way to put $500,000 and $1 million to work and I can get rich and do nothing, I would have done it already. I wouldn't have to do it.
Right. Yeah, that's right. It would have been done. You're not in that room.
I'm not in that room, and I'm not owning a bunch of locations. It's work. It's hard. If I would have done it, if it was that easy, I would have done it already. So,
yeah, I mean, human quality. There are things that are not trainable. Like when you're talking, I'm thinking about what's a bad rainy day. Well, when the Titanic's sinking, allegedly, nobody was there when it was really sinking, but the captain stayed on the boat. He could have very much been like, I'm out of here. But he's like, I'm going down with this thing. Not suggesting a franchisee goes down with their business, but right. I'm saying, like, do you show up and say, I have those intangibles? Because I do think that's the type of currency that weathers the storm. And not that I want to go deep into this, but I do think as AI continues to help evaluate LinkedIn profiles, writing styles, financials, I think it's eventually going to give us some sort of scorecard on whether they have the intangibles that's outside of money based on what they can see on an online footprint. But for the time being, like, you got to trust your head, your heart, and your gut when they come through for a decision day.
Yeah, exactly. And listen, I think the good news on, from where we sit, we've got a lot of industry veterans who have in the franchising space who, whether it's, I think, it'd be a fun little metric for us to do at Radiance. The number of years in franchises, the number of units open, the number of brands supported. It's got to be a pretty impressive number when you think about all the people at the table. I think we've learned some of the cues to look for. We know a good one and we know a tough one, and we've all made mistakes by sacrificing growth and the pipeline of growth for what's going to win long term and the right growth. So, I think the good news is like it is an acquired lens that we've probably looked at, and through and through experience, we can kind of quickly skip to the end on many candidates. And the best thing that I can tell you is, gosh, when we have a dispute, one person has a dispute here, we raise it and we go back to the candidate and say, hey, you need to talk to us about these few things. And we've declined candidates in the past. We've said no, not our. You want to live in Europe and manage this from afar? Not today.
Right.
Like, not today. That's not going to work. So, I think life lessons will teach you a lot. And approving somebody who is not like going to fit the model, it's the gift that keeps on giving in a painful way.
This may sound negative, but it's a positive. Like if I go on Sola's Fran Dev website or Woodhouse's website, what you said of look at the collective experience that's behind this, and more so look at the collective support that's behind this.
Yep.
There's a little bit of that, but it doesn't tell the whole story. Like this is a really thick support structure, which for the CFO to sign off on that means the CFO also knows the more we support our franchisees, the better they do, the more we make from royalty. Like it's smart business.
Yep.
Why is it like you've been at so many other different brands, probably ones that you look at and you're like, they did not have the infrastructure that a Radiance has. Why is it that franchisees, when they're evaluating, don't take a business model like Radiance and put it at the top and say, I'm going to look there until I get rejected, then I'll look at what else is there. Why is Radiance not at the top of their list? No, like the secret that this is best in class in the entire franchise industry among the biggest brands of what you do to support a franchisee to drive them to building the outcome that they want in their business. Why do you think that misses, or why are you not in the discussion with other franchise buyers?
Yeah, I think you're supposed to just make me promote the positive, Nick. But listen, I think there's lots of franchising opportunities out there, and it's actually somewhat of a positive for us when it's all said and done. I think lots of opportunities with varying degrees of sophistication in business, upfront costs. A lot of people make their decision on, I've got X thousands of dollars to buy into a franchise. Yeah. I'm going to find someone in that spot, and that's what I'm going to put to use. And that's the franchise world that I want to run in. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a fair amount of people who maybe don't have the funds to potentially, build out a Woodhouse or build out a Sola. These are 6,000 to 8,000 square foot establishments with rooms, and like it's capital. It's $1 million plus, right? So it's a relatively high initial investment. So I think there's some folks that just get weeded out by the financial makeup. Most of the concepts I've been before, the average build out cost for a 2,000 foot inline health, wellness, and beauty concept, $400,000. Well, you kind of weed yourself out. But at the same time, like, gosh, by having a little bit of a less pool, like the cream kind of rises to the top, Nick. And we are our franchisees are very sophisticated. They're multi-unit owners. They often own or are executives in other companies. We often are private equity backed franchisees. We have like some world-class franchisees, and I actually think, Nick, it's helped our brand stay pretty pure, and it's helped keep the standard. So while it might eliminate some growth, it actually gives us the right people to grow with in a really fundamental, functional way.
There's a program that we do. It's like a franchise assessment, the business viability study with a business. And I'm thinking of a specific client. I said, what's your goal? And they came out with some ridiculous number of franchises that they want to sell. I said, sure, yes, we could sell franchise and get to this number. I said, but what would a world look like if we got fatter and then got taller? Meaning, let's focus on franchisee profitability. Let's make sure we're maximizing what the top line can be at the unit level. Because if we do that, then they're going to continue to scale. And then when we get additional franchisees, like if I really look at Radiance's model, like it's like, let's really focus on the profitability at the unit level, because then when people come in, it's going to be the right people. But I think so often, it's probably just a symptom of franchise sales, is salespeople need to sell, and they like to sell, and they're incentivized by selling. But the franchises that develop the right candidate, which is what you're talking about, is holding the culture tight and making sure the right people get in here, then it's not a numbers game. We're not looking for leads. We're looking for the right buyers, right?
Totally. And, we're fortunate. We actually, yes, our salespeople want to sell. They want to earn. That's how they make their living. But I think if you asked our sales folks too, they also realize if you sell the cell, you dilute the pool, gosh, that next sale is a lot harder because validation starts to go down. Not only, hey, I didn't do as well as that guy promised me or this business promised me, I can't support it. But the peers of the person who failed go, well, I'm doing okay, but the last few haven't. So I don't know. Is there something wrong? Am I special or not? How, what? It starts to lead into this, like, wow, is there something in the water recently? So I think that our sales team has realized to protect the brand, we need to bring on great people. Those great people will do well. Those people who do well will validate, and that will continue to drive the flywheel, and it'll lead to referrals. It'll lead to a much more efficient sales process, because when I call 10 people, when 8 of 10 give me a thumbs up, gosh, that makes the sale a lot easier. So I think to best describe it, our sales team is taking a longer term focus on this, in realizing, man, it is hard to sell through negative validators by bringing in the wrong people.
I mean, it's so fundamental, but if I took every brand, I've probably done work with 700 brands, I would say only a fraction of a percentage point understand what we're talking about right now. And it's because, like, look, if they don't validate, you stall out. If they're not making the money that you set the expectations in item 19, it stalls out. And so we're like so conditioned to sell, but it's everything you just said is the architect of building good business, and it misses so much. I know, like, the topic of this was the lucrative opportunities. People are going to know that this is whether the opportunity is lucrative. I want your opinion on something, and it's something I've been thinking about a lot. And even on the qualification standpoint, I tell sales folks qualify to own 3. They're like, yeah, but that's going to limit our pool of candidates. I'm like, right, but it's going to build enterprise value for the business. The other thing that I've been looking at specifically in item 7 is I look at two benchmarks that I don't like right now. One is grand opening marketing, and one is operating capital. And so the way that I look at those numbers, operating capital, I look at it to set basically the tone of a candidate. Like, how much would you typically make over a 3-month period, so that we're telling you, like, have this much cash on the reserve so you don't stress out about it. And on a marketing fund, it's been interesting. I've been having these conversations with franchisors. I'm like, your grand opening, the definition of grand should be the whole first year. And once you engineer the cost of acquisition for your customer base and your potential return, you start seeing the impact of this, because it's really a race to break even for that franchisee. So I'm telling them, like, it should be 10% of the total investment. They're like, 10% of the total investment? I go, yeah, but you got to understand, it's still cash on the sidelines for them, but it's setting the expectation so that should they not get out of the gates as strong as they thought, you're not going back and saying, hey, you're going to have to spend more on marketing. You're saying, actually, continue to dip in the pool, and this is how we impact it 90 days or 180 days. And so I'm saying these things. I'm curious on your opinion on it. I know that changes the investment structure, but in my opinion, it strengthens the franchisee, likelihood of break even, higher unit sales, which in turn will impact royalty. And so I see positive. Is there any gaps in what I'm talking about to obviously drive a successful business operation?
Yeah, no, I think I think you're thinking about it the right way, and it's how we think about it. I think there's a couple things there. I think that available liquidity early days, it's basically saying, hey, listen, we think this is going to go really well, but hey, at times things happen. Let's say that it's something happened in your trade area, or there was something, hey, your manager quit in month 1. You just need to have a little bit of, like, don't blow it all on unbelievable signage. Like, right. You gotta have some working capital as you ramp this business and learn this business, and it allows you to, like, navigate it through. So it's a little bit of an insurance, like, hey, how do you stay safe? And how do you make sure you're able to grow through the first year, versus the last thing you want to do is go, man, I spent $1 million and I don't have a penny to market. Like, that's not good, right? So I think it's a little bit of a way to say, man, you're going to need to continue to invest in this business as you move throughout the first year, as you mentioned, as a grand opening. The second, and then on the grand opening side, it's definitely about keeping some dry powder for marketing. But there's 2 things we've also found. Again, We've been in this space for a long time. We figured out a few different things about how to make this work. And we're putting a bet down that the 10 to 15 to 20 grand that we spend on your behalf is going to be much, much more efficient than you doing it for the first time and doing a radio ad and blowing your whole wad without knowing it, right? So the idea there is like, man, take our proven playbook and let me help you. Because we talked about this early on. Think about we tell these franchise owners, you think you know now, you think you're going to be good, but when you're walking the location, trying to get the GC to fix the toilet, while you've got a hiring thing going on over here, and you've got an event over here to promote the business, gosh, can you keep your eye on the digital marketing to get those leads and call them back? No, like it's balancing plates. So let us help you balance a plate and with a capability that we can do a little bit more efficiently. So it's both signaling investment, but it's also saying we know how to do it. And what we've also been flexible with, Nick, in our world is, gosh, if you're a franchisee who has 10 units and you know the marketing play, we don't want to charge you that 20 grand. You got it. But for those franchisees who are entering in the system, first time in a Sola, first time in a Woodhouse, and they're not in the industry, gosh, we can help you here. And we want to help you skip to the end. And so I think it's both it's a lever and a capability that we have in addition to keep some dry powder for marketing.
But I said that was last thing. I have one more comment. I think about when franchisees start looking at royalty and they're like, well, why do I have to pay this? Or what is this percentage? Or is this negotiable? I go, okay, let's just we'll take $2 million at 5% for argument's sake. That's $100 grand a year. You show me the math on how you could go hire a CFO, a CMO, a COO, all the support structure underneath that's thinking about your business and how you drive profitability. And it changes their mind. They almost look at it sometimes as fees. And I look at it as an investment in the infrastructure. That's how you get to skip the line. And I feel like this is where some of the terms that exist in franchising are probably the wrong terms. Like whoever invented the word royalty probably should have said it's more like infrastructure cost, because that's what it ultimately is. And so I'm fascinated by this. Even the highest net worth individuals that I've worked with, they still get tripped up on some of these fees. I'm like, it's not a fee, it's an infrastructure cost. Any final comments on that? Because I mean, there's a million different things I could go at, but
yeah. Listen, I think you typically see early days people get the idea of a royalty. You're the new location, you're getting a lot of support, you're feeling it a lot, and then you're like, oh, thank you for that advice. Oh, that's great. Like it's much more tangible early days. I think when you get to like 8, 9, and 10, and you figured out the model, that's when you start to go and you're like, oh man, I could have. You quickly forget like where we came from. I think that's a true statement, but at the same time, like, listen, that's the tension of franchising a little bit, and guess what that means? Those people are in tune to their books. They're thinking about how to drive profitability, and they're like realizing X percent is a cost. And I actually, like, while I don't agree with the premise, I do appreciate that folks are trying to figure out ways to drive ultimate profitability for their business and turning over stones. And you ultimately run out of stones to turn, and you ultimately like want more. And so the first thing you go to is royalties, and you quickly forget. But it is what it is. It's the natural tension of franchising. And the best thing we figure to do in this world, and this is where our brand focused marketing and ops team, positive sentiment, listening, talking, making sure we're always evolving with our franchisees and bringing them along for the ride. That's where we can keep that, gosh, you guys don't listen to me, don't talk to me, why am I paying you a royalty? We keep that at bay. So, but that's just the tension of franchising. And, but we do believe like we provide value and the support structure is there. And, frankly, everybody at Radiance and, Woodhouse and Sola, that's what we work for, is we wake up every day trying to figure out how we drive profitability and a better business for franchisees.
Well, you and I can do a brainstorm at some point. I love what you just said. At some point, it almost turns into like, this is just a share of the pie fee. It's no longer royalty, because if you're opening up 10, I promise you're making money. Like, it's actually working. So that's the success. That's our bonus for us letting you into our brand, and you got to do this with our brand. So there's probably transformation there. But Bob, I'm grateful for this conversation. I will say, now my wife and you, I've met two CFOs who have good personalities and obviously are in it to win it, and that's awesome. And I'm grateful for our time.
I appreciate the time and happy to chat, and look forward to future conversations.
Love it. For Bob, I'm Nick. This was another episode of Meet the Franchise.